Welcome to Standard Intelligence, your resource for competitive constructed magic in the UK. This is episode 63 for the week beginning the 28th of January 2019. I'm Dr. Jack Patton.
And I'm Simeon Beaver. This episode is brought to you in part thanks to our supporters on our Patreon. Many thanks to those of you who have made a contribution. It is immensely appreciated by both of us. Anyone who's our supporter on Patreon by the 5th of February will be eligible for the February draw that we'll be doing next week. If you'd like to be in it or would like to learn more about how to support us, please head over to patreon.com/SIcast. With that, let's get right into the news for this week. So, the main piece of news for this week is that there was no news, essentially. Or, to put another way, we had a Magic Fest in
New Jersey.
New Jersey, thank you. I wasn't even sure where it was. And there was zero coverage. Not just no video coverage of the first Magic Fest with the new set, but no text coverage, no round-by-round results going up onto the Wizards website. Nothing apart from the top 8 deck lists and the top 8 being put on at about 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning.
Which is relatively quick turnaround after the event.
It's slower than it would normally have been.
Yeah, exactly. Like, from our standpoint, we get our deck lists, on Monday and Tuesday. But this is coverage. They're there. Like, they're getting the lists directly from. So...
Yeah, although, of course, they weren't there.
Yeah, except, amusingly, there was a feature match area set up. Did you see that?
I
have saddest picture.
I haven't seen a picture of a feature match area, but I have seen feature match areas at places that didn't have coverage before.
Like video coverage, yeah.
With no video coverage, and they're just as sad. One of the English GPs last year, it was just a couple of tables in the middle of the room. Wasn't really anything to write home about at all.
Yeah, it was the fact that the feature match area was like 10 feet away from where I think 2 Hall of Famers were drafting in Pod 1 at the start of day 2. And it's just like, this would have been so good to feature. Why? Yeah, so the fact that we had no coverage was a bit of a downer. To be fair, limited Grand Prix do get less coverage anyway, so it might have been a decision to not have text coverage.
No.
Not have video coverage. But to not have text coverage seems really, lackluster.
I am in no way surprised. Partly because 2 members of the Blue Envelope podcast are on coverage, and there was a hint dropped in their New Year episode that they were no longer doing coverage. Almost like they were out of a job type of hint.
Oh dear.
There's that, and the stuff about the 32 members of the Magic Pro League, there was going to be something where they were being looked at all the time. And it was either going to be that happened midweek, or that's on weekends and that replaces GP coverage.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because they've got this weekly streaming contract, you're saying that...
So they've got a streaming contract separately to the playing contract.
Yeah.
There was
they have to do a weekly play thing.
There was some tournament, something that was like the Vintage Super League. Something Super League-y type thing that hasn't happened yet. That I felt was likely to, if it's going to happen at the weekends, is going to push out GPs from being on coverage.
Which... Again, right, so if you're going to do that, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but we'll get into that in a minute, why is there no text coverage? Even if there's just text coverage, it feels like that is really easy to do.
I don't know, it involves sending someone out there and paying them.
Yeah, I guess, but at the same time...
And I don't think that they get very much traffic
from the text
that comes because they have text coverage.
Yeah.
Now, they'll get a little bit, but I'm pretty certain their data will show that it's a very small part of their website. And yes, there's a vocal number of people who
are
who
vocal
look at
when
it,
we say we would like that back, please.
Who we are connected to because they are part of the competitive Magic scene that we all have on our Twitters.
Yeah.
But if you went to a random Magic player even in a store on an FNM and went, so do you go and look at the text coverage to see what's happening in round 6 of a GP?
The answer is probably
no.
I go at the end to see what the top decks were. If they go at all.
If they go at all, they do that.
Yeah.
And so they'll have enough traffic based on the top 8 decks to put them up still. But no reason. I can see why they're not doing it.
Yeah, it still feels like there should be stories Like, there are stories generated at these events that
there
people
are,
like to follow.
Again, that no doubt some people do follow, and people like us do follow, and I go and look at it sometimes. But I don't go and look at, say, the stories from Kobe or from Cincinnati.
Because they're not players I'm ever going to know.
I really don't care. I'll go and look at events, the UK GPs, but then I've been at them. So if there's been a major story, I already know about it.
There's been a few of them, hasn't there? So I get you. And there was an open letter put out earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, Simeon. It was by a Scottish competitor, and I thought it was excellent. A judge, rather. Sorry, yes, but
and competitor. I believe she is both. Yes, I thought it was excellent too. I liked the comments about the fact that the MPL is essentially 32 middle-aged men. Which is fair.
We had kind of mentioned it before, and it's a little bit like, all the optics on that one might not be great, but we understand that you are taking people who are judged to be the best Magic players in the world at the moment, and that's fair.
And that is those people, and that's fine. And they're not all middle-aged. I think some of them would probably be quite offended if I said they were middle-aged. And there is a cross-section of nations in the top 32, and you feel that if there'd been no players from the Far East or no players from Europe in the top 32, they would have found a way of fitting some in.
Yeah, they would have done the sort of system that they do for Worlds competitors, in like, you get births from your geo region and that sort of thing.
That's not tokenism. But if they'd have put a female player in, that would have been tokenism.
We don't have Melissa Del Toro on the tour at the moment.
The fact that GP coverage shows the wide variety of people who play Magic.
That's
over the course of both the first 3 or 4 rounds and then also the first 3 or 4 rounds on the Sunday.
It's very sad, and I think it was Sarah Zyler pointed out, the reason that they kept competing was because they saw women doing well at GPs, and they were like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like, there's no barrier, there's no stigma to me being a competitive Magic player.
Yes, people like me do play, even though all my friends go, what on earth are you doing? Because that is what most of us experience.
Yeah.
This game is for children. Why are you playing it?
Yeah.
Or I've never heard of that. Duh, stupid. The fact you see people like you playing it at high level, even if you don't want to reach that level, is affirming for you playing the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and whilst I have not backed up Wizards in what they've done, I've understood why they might have done it. I
think we all need to take a moment and say, Simeon, thank you very much for being slightly devil's advocate and pointing out the very logical business reasons for this, and you are absolutely right. But at the same time, gosh, this boils my blood.
Well, at the same time, this makes me... I am finding myself not wanting to play.
Yeah.
And not being as excited for looking at decks and things, because I'm going, when am I... Firstly, I have no idea when I'm playing these decks.
Yeah.
And I'm not spending £100 on a deck to go and play at an FNM.
No, exactly. Like, let's also point this point out about the coverage stuff. It was announced in a reply to a tweet. It wasn't even a tweet on its own.
Yeah,
and it certainly wasn't an article on MTG Daily saying, we're cutting down on the coverage. We're really sorry, guys, but there's something new coming.
Sorry, have you just said MTG Daily? I'm sorry, that doesn't essentially exist anymore.
It's esports.
No, I just mean now, isn't it? Their front page has almost nothing on it most days.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Except from other content. It links you to other content providers. Great. Yeah. Particularly great when I'm at work and Star City is blocked because it's a sales site.
Yeah.
So I can't go to Star... that's another matter entirely. I have been going, am I actually still going to play this?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be feeling that. That's silly.
We're in one of the best standard formats. Again, people have said best standard format in 2 years, definitely. Best standard format in 6 years, maybe. Like, we're in a good spot. Modern
best
looks
standard
healthy.
format I've ever played in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, same. Absolutely the same. The last 3 months were invigorating. They actually got me fired up about Magic again. And then we come back to this post-Christmas and it's like, cool, new set, we got hype. Oh, no coverage for the first event. Oh, okay, no coverage for subsequent events. Like, guys, tell us what's going on. And then, as you say, there's still no announcements on our local level competitive play. Like, there's still nothing coming out of WotC. There's still this odd radio silence that's... I mean, I know you've said that you think they're just trying to get it right, but say something. Say anything now. Say we're trying to get it right. We're taking our time on this one. Announce an announcement. I will go back to announcements of announcements if we get some fracking news.
They said that there were some places doing events. We don't even know what those places and what those events are.
Yeah.
Even if they are only in the States.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to know, okay, what possible thing do we have to do, even if it's in 6 months' time? But yeah, I understand it from a business point of view, why there was no coverage. Mm-hmm. I don't like it from a personal point of view. To be fair, if they were doing just text coverage, it wouldn't have actually made that much difference to how I was feeling either.
No, I suppose... I tell you what, if it had been the first week of the new format and they'd gone, there's no video coverage, there's just text coverage, but video coverage will be coming back for other GPs, we just have...
They weren't expecting it to be a thing, because that's why it was a reply to a tweet. Just, oh no, of course there isn't.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, that was the meaning I took from it. It was, oh, why do you think there's no coverage? Like, why would you think that there would be coverage?
Yeah.
Have we not explained this? It feels very much like someone should have explained this to us at some point when they announced the MPL, and someone left that part out.
Don't think they thought we were bothered about GP coverage. We moan about it all the time, unfortunately, which doesn't help.
No, but I moan about it because it's not very good. But if they did it more, they'd have more practice.
No, but I respectfully disagree there, in that they've been doing it for 5 years at multiple GPs. How many GPs did they cover last year? And it is better, and I like GP coverage. I don't have a problem with the coverage itself, but enough people do that they moan about it. The people who like it don't put up on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else.
Yeah. I
like this coverage on the whole. It's only the moaning that goes on. And that is the other thing that's putting me off Magic, is the amount of moaning about absolutely bloody everything. And now I'm sitting here moaning about something. Oh no,
you've become part of the problem, Simeon, I'm afraid.
Oh, poops.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I think we need to move on to actually talk about some decks.
We absolutely do.
Before we run out of an episode.
Yes, so we've got a set of local results from a standard winner box. So why don't we go and have a little look-see over there?
We had the standard winner box from Harlequins in Preston. Thank you very much to them for sending us their results. It took place on the 27th of January. There were 22 players. And the winner was a Jund mid-range deck. And I have to be honest, on the deck list, they put cards I currently own. And it is a bit like that. Lots of 2-ofs and 1-ofs.
That's very honest of you. I love it. I absolutely love it. The honesty there of just sort of like, these are cards that I own. I'm going to play them.
These are all powerful cards. It might do well. And it did. I mean, when you're playing Skargan Hellkite and Ravager Worm and Carnage Tyrant and Doom Whisperer, that's a pretty strong set of creatures coming down.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is how many Mythics can I stuff in this deck of cards that I own. So you've done pretty well there.
Yeah, and then a couple of Vivian Rees, a couple of Domrees, a couple of Bedevils, just because of that.
For cards that you own, what on earth do you not own? Like, how did you have all of this week one?
I think this means I played 4 or 5 pre-releases.
Yeah.
And
I played Gruul in all of them.
Possibly, yeah, and I traded for a couple of things with things I got for other things. And I'm not a 4-ofs of anything yet, so I'm going to play 2s and 1-ofs.
Fair enough. I like 1-ofs. I really do. I'm a fan of the 1-ofs. But yeah, so this is very much a proper Jund mid-range list. It's doing the kill some creatures, interact with you a little bit, but mostly I'm being a relatively proactive deck with some grind capability as backup in Planeswalkers, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I actually really like the look of this list. I think there's a lot of nice stuff here, and it's, I'll be honest with you, I tell you what I'm actually quite liking. It's not leaning on, the Fires of Yavimaya cards, the Rhythm of the Wild.
It's not.
It's not got that in there to give it this like extra power thing. It's just going, nah, why would I try and build synergies with this lot of cards that are all just really good by themselves?
It's got the Domri to do that instead.
Well, it does have the Domri to do that, but also Domri actually finds creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the winning list. It needs tuning, but it's a good place to start for anyone.
Absolutely.
Runner-up was a far more well-known quantity of Mono Red Frenzy.
Are there any new cards in here? Skewer the
Yes,
critics
there's
and
Skewer
light
the
up
Critics,
stage.
light up the stage. That's pretty much it.
Light Up the Stage is straight insane.
And
that card is completely nuts.
And whilst this deck only runs 2 Experimental Frenzy, it's still Mono Red Frenzy to distinguish it from any potential lists we get which have Flame of Keld instead, which will have a different game plan in a way rather than necessarily a different makeup.
And I think it'll have a different sideboard plan, because obviously this deck's sideboard plan has the treasure maps and the Rekindling Phoenixes in. I don't think a Flame of Keld deck is often going to have that sort of a sideboard plan. If it does,
it would have to be taking out the Flame of Kelds.
Yeah, exactly.
And then in the semi-finals, we had a Jeskai Control and another Mono Red Frenzy. Again, fairly similar lists to what we've seen previously. The Jeskai Control, interestingly, creatures only 3 Crackling Drakes and 1 Angel of Grace.
Yeah, Angel of Grace looked to be doing some good work on coverage over the weekend, but it was doing it more in a mid-rangey kind of deck that occasionally got to crack back after it blew you out, because you go, attack for lethal. Okay, I'm going to block the things that I get to kill, but no blocks flash in this Angel.
Yeah.
You know, I don't die.
I don't die, and you die on the crackback.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. I feel like in a control deck, it's medium because it's not backed up by that punch. You're still at 1, you know, and even so against red decks, it's not dying to go into your graveyard to put you back to 10. And
unless it's blocking a Phoenix.
Unless it's blocking a Phoenix, like if you're thinking of doing something like that, I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, I will do this. I will trade it off, make the Phoenix an egg,
kill the egg, get the Angel.
Yeah, maybe kill the egg and then get the Angel of Grace graveyard trigger. That I can see being interesting.
Right,
but most of the time, it's not going into the graveyard, so you're never going to be able to gain that 9 life back. So you're still at 1, so you're still dead to a burn spell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't feel like that's a good place to be against aggro decks. Against mid-range decks, you're still playing You've still got to settle the wreckage that you could be playing instead. That ruins people even harder for attacking when they shouldn't.
Yeah, I believe it does. No, it doesn't have any settles in this one.
No, it doesn't, which I'm a little bit surprised by. Only 4 Deafening Clarion and 2 Cleansing Nova as its Wrath capability. But yeah.
And then in the quarterfinals, we had another Mono Red Frenzy deck, a Sultai Climb list, and 2 Bant mid-range decks.
Yeah, so the Sultai Climb list is relatively similar to what you would expect out of like a Sultai mid-range list, or some versions of the Sultai mid-range list.
It is Sultai mid-range. It just happens to have 2 Hadana's Climbs.
It happens to have 2 Hadana's Climbs in there. You know, you're then going to get a little bit of extra action. So you're playing, instead of playing only 1 Incubation Druid, which a lot of the Sultai mid-range decks were playing at the SCG, you're playing 3 because you get that nice, 1-2 punch of Incubation into Hadana's Climb, make 3 mana, play another creature, and then next turn I'm holding up way more mana for Hydroid Krasis. Which is obviously completely nuts. And you also get the nice combos with Growth Chamber Guardian. The only sort of slightly weird cards, Biogenic Ooze in the main board, that's normally relegated to the sideboard in these Sultai decks, which is kind of awesome to see, actually. I really like it. I've played with the Dylan Donegan version a couple of times on Arena, and it's kind of nice. I like
the use. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. B, those games tend to go long. Like the mid-rangey battles do tend to go long. So you're almost this Sultai Climb deck is almost pre-boarded for the mid-range fights, right? That's sort of what's going on here, because it just gives them another absolutely positively must-kill threat.
Yeah.
Your Vivian Reed's Carnage Tyrant, which is really hard to kill, And then Hydroid Krasis will kill you very quickly if it's big enough. So again, you have to kill all these things, and then you just sort of go, oh, well, here's five mana for 6/6 of power, and next turn it's gonna be a lot more power. It's another 5 power next turn. Sorry, not 5, 4 power, because I'm making a 2/2 and then putting 3 counters on things.
Oh right, yeah,
5
I see.
power.
Yeah, 5 power. Yeah, if you're making the 2/2, yes. I don't find myself making the 2/2s very much with the use.
If you've got other stuff to do, you've got other stuff to do. If you've got nothing else to do because you haven't found the Hydroid Krasis
because Krasis keeps getting you more cards, you have things to do all the time.
Krasis, find other Krasises has been like
the
thing that I've been doing all weekend.
It's bananas.
It's been so good. So the Sultai Climb list is relatively what you would consider out of a week 1 version of the Sultai list. There's a lot of like 2 ofs that are just feeling out the waters.
Yeah,
I think.
Again, it's I haven't quite got 4 ofs of these things yet. I'm gonna play 2s.
I honestly feel like there's a couple of like, I'm just going to test this, like Zagana. Is Zagana actually good? Like, she only draws 1 card and she's only occasionally doing it. Maybe she's not actually that good, but she does give...
an 8/8 trample.
How does she turn into an 8/8 trample?
When you...
when you flip her Hadana's Climb.
No, when you thingy her. When you
when you adapt her. Cost. Oh, yeah. She does get pretty nutty. And then this is also playing the Mesmerizing Benthid, which is the Mythic from this set, the blue Mythic from this set that makes illusions, you were saying,
yes,
Simeon?
Makes 2 O2 illusions and is hexproof while there's an illusion on the battlefield. I'm not entirely sure what it's doing in this deck.
Again, it's just another one of those really tough to kill things.
But it's not big enough for that to matter.
No, that's also my opinion. And again, I feel like this is a test. I'm going to play it. If I find myself going, I really need to find this back into my hand, I probably think it's a good card. I
sort of think if this person had 4 Hydroid Krasis, they would be playing those and not the Ooze or the Benthid.
Probably. Like the Ooze maybe goes into the sideboard. I don't know. But yeah. And then these 2 banned mid-range
Before you
lists...
go on to that, I'm just one thing I want to point out on here. The growth in power of Assassin's Trophy this season. When people are only running 3, 4, 5 basics, they can be out of basics when you Assassin's Trophy their thing.
But they're going to have stuff to do with their mana.
Yes, but they might not be getting anything with it.
This is very true. I totally get that.
1 basic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my Mardu Aristocrats list plays all of 2, and sometimes they're just both in your opening hand.
So,
like, well, okay.
So, yeah, I think obviously it's still got the problem where you're not going to wait until they've played out all their basics.
And my problem is in the mid-range fights where you really want it to be able to kill Vivian Reeds and other Planeswalkers, which are really important in those mirror matches, you're giving them an extra point of power on the Hydroid Krasis.
You are assuming they still have a basic.
You're not wrong.
I think certainly Settle the Wreckage is much more powerful because people aren't going to go and fetch 8 basics.
No, you're absolutely right. There's none of that, well, I get to thin my deck 8 cards or something stupid because you settled me twice and I had 4 creatures on the board both times. That isn't a thing anymore because you're going to get the 5 basics out your deck the first one and then go, well, guess the next one is literally just Wrath to Exile.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, move on to the banned mid-range decks.
So yeah. Oh, no, actually, there is something I do want to mention in the sideboard of this Sultai list, and that is Unmoored Ego. And this got discussed a little bit on the SCG, and I think, certainly week 1, and maybe even going forward, excellent card choice.
You think?
Yeah. Week 1, you don't know what everyone's playing. So if you can sit there for a couple of turns, work out what your opponent's doing, and then cast it, and take away a critical card for their deck. You know, take away the Nexus of Fates, take away the Teferis, take away the Hydroid Krasises, the Vivian Reeds, or the Carnage Tyrants. You get a lot of value out of just going, oh, okay, this can deal with X random thing that I didn't build my deck to beat in the first place, so I get a little bit of flex value out of it.
Okay, I was wondering why it's better doing that week 1 than it is week 10. But what you're saying is because you don't know what you're going up against
what the
week
field
1.
is going to be. Yeah, exactly.
You have this which can take whatever the opponent has as their best card.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
I mean, there is definitely like an argument for this going forward. If there is an annoyingly hard to interact with deck that you really need to deal with X threat in your blue-black deck that for whatever reason can't deal with it. Again, Carnage Tyrant's a pretty good example here. Blue-black decks, especially if they're blue-black control decks, do not get to interact with Carnage Tyrant. They have to try to wrath the
though
board.
they haven't. Yeah, they weren't doing it at the end of last season, but people weren't playing Unmoored Ego then.
Yeah, true enough. But my point is, week 1, I think Unmoored Ego is a really nice pickup, and well done for this person for just sort of going, I need something flexible, because if they're doing something busted that I can't interact with, I am dead. And then, these Bat mid-range lists, and we both said this before the cast started, so I mean, these are both very much on the control-y end of mid-range.
Yeah, they're very close to control.
There's Quenches and Absorbs in both of these lists. Frilled Mystics as creatures, again, both of these lists. Angels of Grace and Dream Eaters in here. One of them has gone for Growth Chamber Guardian and the other one has gone for Hydroid Krasis. Card availability / not knowing which one is, so maybe these two players are working together and one's gone, I'll play the Hydroid Krasis, you play the Growth Chamber Guardian, we'll see which one feels better.
Yeah, and they both got the same result. So.
Yeah, well, they got the same result, but maybe after they compare notes, they sit down and they go, yeah, okay, Hydroid Krasis felt brilliant, and the other one goes, yeah, the Growth Chamber Guardian was a really tough job to make work, so...
except it's not.
No, exactly. But my point is, that's a thing that you can do
so
week 1.
The Guardian keeps getting itself back, and the Krasis just gets some random stuff.
Yeah. Growth Chamber Guardian, be able to hold up a bunch of mana for your counter spells and your instant speed interaction. Very good, obviously. I think that's a very nice build going on there. But yeah, they're very controlling Bant decks, but they're not Fog decks.
And they're not Teferi decks.
And they're not Teferi decks. That was actually something that we were very surprised by.
So you can't call them control.
Simeon, yeah, exactly. As soon as you put Teferi in these decks, you would happily call them control decks now, because they will win by controlling the game. These decks have definitely got a more, not necessarily tempo-orientated plan, but the fact that Dream Eaters and Angels of Grace and Frilled Mystics all have Flash gives them this instant speed capability.
Yes, maybe it should be called Bant Flash.
Maybe
we'll find that out
when the universe.
When one of these thanks when one of these decks gets into a bigger event and does well, it'll likely pick up a name somewhere. But for the moment, I'll keep them as mid-range on the website.
Yeah. I'm not against the idea of these being Bant Flash. Absolutely. And in that style of deck, if you're playing it that way, maybe Growth Chamber Guardian is just better. Like maybe in this sort of deck, tapping out for a big Hydro Krasis
it's not what you want to do.
It's not something you want to do, because you're letting your opponents out for a turn. So I can totally see that being a thing that you have to consider when you put Hydro Krasis in your deck. Hydro Krasis is a very good Magic card. It is not an instant include in any blue-green deck. Like, Merfolk's not going to play it.
No.
It's too expensive to make good, I think. And it doesn't work with any of your synergies.
Yeah, you don't want to pay, apart from your +1/+1 counter synergies.
Yeah, but they're kind of a side synergy. You just want creatures with the type Merfolk on them.
Generally speaking, and not jellyfish.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our local result. I do think, obviously, card availability is a big factor when it comes to smaller local events, and it is noticeable that a lot of those decks are very much based on the decks that we had last season, with a few additions. Not quite so much when we go to the bigger events. Shall we have a look at? We've mentioned it a few times already. The SCG event in a deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at our worldwide metagame in the deep dive. So as Simeon said, we had some SCG going on over the weekend. It was actually really fun. I don't know how much of it you got to watch.
I watched a bit, not very much of day 1, a bit more of day 2. Fell asleep before the semi-finals started because it was ridiculously late, as always. But yeah, I saw some fun matches and some great decks and some interesting stuff going on. And some stuff I didn't find quite so interesting. Some decks that I didn't like, but that's...
Yeah, unfortunately the nature of the beast.
Indeed.
But yeah, no, absolutely. And I also want to say, like, the coverage was really well done. The use of Cardboard Live, I loved.
Yes.
Because
being able to put up
you
the
could
whole
just
deck
go,
list.
this deck looks really interesting. Bump, copy to clipboard, paste it into a deck builder. I'm gonna maybe fiddle with this, maybe play it as is. Hence the reason, like, I got to play Wyatt Darby's Esper deck, or start looking at builds of Wyatt Darby's Esper deck on Saturday morning, or well, Saturday afternoon for us. You know, it was just so well put together. I was really impressed. Like the coverage team that's doing all the typing up really deserves some props for that. And then obviously it was Jerry T and Brian Gottlieb's first time doing coverage, which I thought I'm a big fan of both of them.
You really would not have known it was their first time doing coverage.
No, they were both so confident and so casual together on camera. I mean, obviously they do a podcast every week together.
That they've had that interaction with each other, and Brian in particular knows how to pull things out of Jerry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian did an excellent job of, like, let's steer Jerry towards this thing that we kind of want to talk about. And yeah, it was excellently well done by both of them, I think. So looking forward to more tournaments with those guys. I think next weekend is Emma Handy, Todd Anderson, and then Matthias and Ryan on coverage. So that'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, Todd's been on a few times, but I think this is Emma Handy's first time doing coverage.
It's not standard next week, is it?
It's not standard. I think it's team trio.
Oh yes, it is. It is. It's team constructed. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll still get some standard, but obviously we'll have to be careful when we start talking about metagame breakdowns in standard, because again, there's the team effect going on. So yeah, let's have a little look at these. Obviously, we've got the open day 2 metagame breakdown. And from that, we can see a very serious, like, leaning towards Sultai. Sultai is very heavily popular. We've got 12 decks that are classified as mid-range and 5 that are classified as climb. I don't know how many climbs you have to have in before you're a climb deck. Like, does one climb make you a climb deck?
I think so, because it gives you a win condition that's not mid-range creatures.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yes, you need a mid-range creature to go with it.
Creature.
But putting something, it's a one hit for 14 sometimes, with a Carnage Tyrant goes in the air. And it's not a slow, incremental, do you 2 damage here and 2 damage here and build up. It can be a...
Oh, I got through, you're dead.
Yeah, it can be we've had a complete board stall, but now this thing is just flying over you and bang.
Yeah. So we had, as I say, 12 mid-range and 5 climb. We had 9 mono-red aggro decks taking advantage of the new spectacle spells, I imagine.
Yep.
Basically all of them there.
And
we had...
Again, though, that's sort of... Again, it's similar decks still to last season that needed just a couple of additions.
I don't want to say easy, but relatively understandable, the changes that you want to make to those
and you're
decks,
like,
right?
I know this is powerful, so I can go and do it. I don't need to worry about this new thing I'm building up in my head that might completely flop or might be amazingly powerful. We're not sure.
And as you say, day 2 of an SCG, and I think they had like 600 players on day 1, so... You know, the players rising to the top and making it to day 2 probably didn't think about this.
So does that mean they only have 10% of their players get to day 2?
It's still a 9-round 7-2 cut, so I guess so.
Is that the sort of percentage we get? I don't think I've ever thought about it.
I've never really thought
maybe it's sort of
no.
10 to 15%. I'm not. Maybe 15% is probably more likely. I don't know quite how many players they had at this one on day 1.
Neither. But it was a fairly large tournament. But my point was the cards that are coming in for the mono red deck, 2 uncommons, playsets of.
Yeah.
Like, easy to get your hands on week 1 is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Next up, we had 5 Bant Nexus, 5 Esper control decks, 4 Esper mid-range decks, and I feel like that's the Wyatt Darby effect going on there. He's been crushing it on the streaming and has been doing a ton of work on this mid-range deck out in the open, and he actually managed to make it to top 8 with the Esper mid-range. And it was... I think I messaged you about it when he was doing his 24-hour stream, and you sort of went, don't think I like that Basilica Bellhorn. Actually, I think we mentioned it on the show last week. But... it looked really good.
It's been certainly been better than I was expecting it to be. It's one of those cards where you go, oh yeah, okay, this card I wasn't expecting to do well, and it has. It's one of the climbers of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we've got 4 Is It Drakes. A lot of those will have been taking advantage of Terramanda. Certainly, the Brad Carpenter list that made it into the top 8 was making use of Terramanda to good effects. You know what's really interesting? How important 5 toughness is.
Yes. You know what's also interesting is when you pump the Terramander for 1.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's kind of gross, right?
Oh my goodness me! It's now a 5/5 for 2 mana.
Yeah. Then we had 3 bat climbs, 2 4-color gates, 2 Nexus of Gates, 2 mono blue aggro, 2 Rakdos aggro, 2 Azorius aggro, which is a really interesting deck, and I do suggest people go and take a look at that, but I'm not going to deep dive it at the moment. And then 2 bad mid-range lists, and then the rest were all one of. So yeah, a really broad field, but I will say there's a leaning towards Sultai, Mono Red, and Esper in here. That's relatively obvious to see those decks all grabbing at least 9 slots.
And notable are leaning towards 3 color and not 2 color.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely that aspect going on there. The top 8, I think, where we've got here, there we go. Sultai mid-range managed to win it. Runner-up as a band mid-range. In the semis, we had that Azorius aggro that I just mentioned, an Esper control list, and then in the quarters, we've got another Esper control, another Sultai mid-range, the Is It Drakes list, and then the Esper mid-range lists from Brad Carpenter and then Wyatt Darby, respectively.
Yeah, it was the 2 Sultai mid-range decks faced each other in the quarterfinal. So Sultai mid-range only lost to itself in this top 8.
In this top 8, yeah. And, I mean, there are a lot of minor variations going on within the theme of Sultai mid-range, and I'm going to take you way back to something that I said about Temur Energy. Once you're in the archetype, there's not a lot you can do that's too terribly wrong.
Yep.
Want to play Growth Chamber Guardian? Do it. Want to play a bunch of Incubation Druids? Do that. Are you playing Hydroid Krasis, Vivian Reed, and some level of black interaction? Cool, you're probably going to be okay.
I would say you definitely do want to have the Wild Growth Walker and Explore package because of the aggro decks.
A, the aggro decks, and B, you still want the Explore package because you're still only packing 24 lands in a fairly mana-intensive deck.
Yeah, both of those reasons are reasons to have that package there. Can you believe back 2 seasons ago where people were like, what on earth are you playing Wild Growth Walker for?
I really wish that Alexander Gordon Brown could have bought stocks in Wild Growth Walker when he top 8'd the GP.
If it had been a rare,
yeah, you would have been like, I'm buying in on this because I think I've seen something that a lot of other people haven't seen. But yeah, it's really impressive how basically every Golgari deck and Sultai deck for the last season and a bit now has been built with at least 8 Explorers and the 3 to 4 Wild Growth Walkers, and sometimes up to 10 Explorers to go with those Wild Growth Walkers. They have become so integral to the deck.
Yeah.
I personally don't particularly like them post-board against the mirror.
No.
In game 1, I actually quite like them because they let you have an odd beatdown game in game 1. But I've seen a lot of people leaving them in, and I really want to know why. What are you not bringing in?
Partly, I guess it's because you want to find the lands.
Yeah, I'm not taking out the Explorers. No. I'm taking out the Wild Growth Walkers. I don't need to gain life. It's a mid-range. It's a mid-range
I guess
fight.
It's also going big, making it into a 4/6 or a 7/9 or whatever when it can go.
I'm not taking out my Ravenous Chupacabras, Simeon. Chupacabra that's fine. I'll get the Chupacabra back with fine finality later.
Fair, and I guess it's how much do you want to bring in the mirror, and if you haven't got other things to take out, you take them out. One of the things that some of them have been running, and not everyone, the Hostage Taker.
I love the Hostage Taker. I played one main, one side. I was playing the Dylan Donegan version online, and it was gross. It was so good.
What did you find yourself taking with it?
Hydroid Krasis.
I thought it might be.
It's so funny, because even if they kill your Hostage Taker, which is normally a terrible situation, normally that is an auto 2-for-1, their Krasis is still a 0/0 and dies.
Yep.
If you get to untap and cast their Hydroid Krasis to draw you extra cards, that's fantastic.
So
the downside isn't really a downside.
You can cast it with the X in it, but they get it back and it just goes on the battlefield. They haven't
just
cast
goes as a 0.
So it's a 0 when it dies.
Because, Simeon, if I've taken something off the battlefield, it only seems fair that it should go straight back onto the battlefield.
Yes.
That's, it shouldn't cost you mana to replay your creatures. that you've already cast once. Yeah, it's really interesting that that's the sort of thing that gets to happen. And then I have had games where, completely insane versions of the games, and I'm pretty certain my opponent was playing it really wrong, where I have stolen Crackling Drakes and then played them.
Mm-hmm.
If I can do it in the same turn, that makes me happier. If I can go 8 mana,
as is the usual thing with Hostage Taker,
Drake,
you need to...
Yeah.
So with the Krasis, you don't have to do that. You can take the Krasis for 3 mana.
Yeah, that's the best thing.
But yeah,
if they've managed to ramp out a big Krasis really early, you just sort of go, I'm going to kill that. I'm going to hold my Ravenous Chupacabra for something that it needs to die. You know,
and then they still have to
weird effect.
They still have to kill the Hostage Taker because otherwise they're giving you the chance to get it back and
cast it
and get stuff from it. Yeah, that does feel pretty.
It feels really good. Like I have brought in the second Hostage Takers against the mid-range decks that are playing Krasis. Or any ETB effects, actually. Like if I can steal your ETB,
right? If you can steal the Chupacabra, lovely. But the thing is, to do that, you need 7 mana to take a Chupacabra.
8
mana. Sorry, the Hostage Taker's 4, isn't it?
It is 4 as well, yes. Yeah.
Whereas to take the Krasis is only 4. Because that's why they weren't... That's why Hostage Taker hasn't been all over standard last season, is because it's like, yes, I want to take this thing, that would be great, but then I've also got to have the mana to play it, otherwise you're just going to kill my Hostage Taker and get it back.
And obviously the reason it saw play before was when the Scarab God was around and you could do it end of turn out of the graveyard.
Yeah, they killed it, my Hostage Taker, at some point. Oh, well, what a shame, it's now coming back, it's bigger, and it's taking your thing.
Yeah, and it's at instant speed, so I'll do that end step and then untap and play your massive creature that I've stolen. So because we can't do that anymore, its stock has definitely decreased. I still think it's worth a consideration, if not an auto-include. I don't think it's an auto-include yet. I think if Sultai midrange gets bigger, like if I think it's going to be a pillar of the format. I don't see it going anywhere. Golgari was brilliant, and I think adding blue has just made it insane. But if we see this become, a large portion of the metagame, and I am really only thinking 20%, because we're not saying that Hostage Taker is awful everywhere else. It's just only okay everywhere else.
And it's not great against red, for instance.
I think it's fine against red. It's slow and clunky.
Then it often comes down, it tries to take something and they kill it in response, and their thing hasn't disappeared anyway.
This is true. But what it's done then is made them discard a card and gain you 3 life.
As has any other creature that they want to kill.
This is very true, but they really want to kill that one.
Your
Chupacabra, they're never going to bother killing.
Your 2/1. Yeah, you can take my 2/1.
No. It's definitely coming out post board against the red deck. So I'm not arguing bringing extras in. I'm just saying I'm okay to main board 1 against the red decks because it's okay. It's a 2/3. It blocks the lava runner.
2/3 is important.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I can definitely see that. We also had the MTGO Mythic Championship Qualifier.
That's what it was.
It was
right. It was a Mythic. Yes, it was a Mythic Championship Qualifier. Yes.
Yeah. Hence the reason I've highlighted it. There are obviously 5.0 lists up. Again, the number of 5.0 lists we get means it's very hard to judge how good a list was, because it could just be that happens to be the one that's 10 cards different.
Yeah,
and yes, it did 5.0, but
they're places to go to jump off from, to go, I want to play a deck with this card in it. Has there been a 5.0? Yes, there has. Okay, I'll try that as my starting point.
Yeah, precisely, Simeon. And here in the MTGO lands, the top 8 was, the winner was another Sultai deck, but it was Sultai Climb. Again, 2 Hidana's Climb in here. The runner-up was a Naya aggro deck.
Three colour aggro just strikes me as bonkers, but
it's splashing into green. So this is very similar to Brad Nelson's Boros Angels list from GP. Was that New Jersey as well?
Possibly, but Brad Nelson's...
It was a Brad Nelson list, yeah. Because it always got taken the mickey out of, because it's like, Boros Angels, ? Rekindling Phoenix? But this is splashing into green for Growth Chamber Guardian and Gruul Spellbreaker. Now, obviously, those are both single green cards. Oh, and
Rhythm of the Wild, yes.
Those are all single green cards, so the splash is not too tough, but we're still playing a Boros Guildgate in here just to make like the mana palatable. So 3-color aggro decks, really hard. Just putting that one out there.
It does.
Mana base is really hard to make.
It does go up to Lyra and Rekindling Phoenix. You could argue it's not really an aggro deck, it's a mid-range deck. But this is on the aggro side of mid-range.
Side of the mid-range. Whereas our other ones, we're talking about, that's a control-y version of...
And I think once you put 4 History Benalias in to something, and you've got 3 Adanto Vanguards, that's pretty much an aggro deck of some kind.
That's pretty aggro-y, yeah. So yeah, really interesting to see there. Next up, we've got a Jeskai controller. My bad. That is a banned Nexus list, and it's really weird because it's got Expansion Explosion in it, and no red mana to cast it with. Like, you can only cast Expansion.
No,
apart from Gift
you
of
cast
Paradise.
Explosion with Gift of Paradise, yeah.
Gift of Paradise, of course. Yes, of course. I'd forgotten about that. So yeah, it's sort of a 4-colored Nexus list, but really it's a banned Nexus list.
Yeah, I have called it banned Nexus when I put the top 8 list together.
Yeah. We also had a Nexus of Gates list. This is, I think, Brian Gottlieb sort of has been shouting about this list.
He loves this Nexus of Gates. He thinks it's amazing.
And it's taking all of the control-y bits of the Gates deck, mostly just Gates Ablaze and Guild Summit, and adding in Wilderness Reclamation and Nexus of Fate and going, we're a control deck now.
Yeah, and Expansion Explosion, just for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Expansion Explosion is mostly your win con as well.
And
maybe Hydroid Crisis.
Expansion Explosion is where you're going to win most of those games.
I imagine so. Next up in the quarterfinals, we had a normal banned Nexus, 2 mono red Frenzies, and an Esper midrange. Esper midrange pulling up again in a top 8. This time, Dovin Grand Arbiter and Teferi seeing a little bit more play over a lot of different sorts of creatures, but we've still got, Hero of Precinct 1 in here.
Yeah, and Bellhorns.
A bunch of multicolours. Actually, there are no single-coloured spells apart from Hero of Precinct 1. So
everything else gets a soldier.
Yeah, everything else you cast is getting you an extra soldier for value once the Hero of Hero of Precinct 1. Oh, wow, that's going to be annoying. Hero of Dominaria and Hero of Precinct 1 in the same deck. I cast this hero, which one?
the one that's called a hero instead of the one that's titled a hero.
Just titled a hero. Fair.
And it's interesting that this deck uses Hostage Taker as well. So, yeah, Hostage Taker is definitely on the way up.
Mm-hmm. So the metagame breakdown for this one is very similar actually to the day 2 metagame from the Open, from the SCG Open, in that there are 9 Sultai mid-range lists, there are 8 mono red lists,
and everything else is
and then
3s,
everything else is
lower,
is 3s at most. Yeah, the Gates mid-range list is a 3, and everything else is 1s and 2s. So I mean, obviously we did only get the top 32 from this set, so there may be a little bit more going on. But what's interesting here is, everyone was talking about the SCG results kind of being not exactly what everyone expected. There was a lot more expectation of taking turns, the banned Nexus decks doing more, just Nexus decks in general, doing better. And a lot of people seemed to have taken away this idea that because they didn't top 8, everything is fine, and similarly of the red decks. And yet here on MTGO, what we've got is 1 of everything else, and then 2 fate decks and 2 red decks. And again, in the top 32, there were no other Nexus of Fate decks apart from the 2 that top 8'd, but there were a ton of red decks. Again, it's showing that ease of understanding the construction that you're having to create, whereas the Fate decks had a really good conversion rate.
They did, but they didn't have at Star City.
At the SCG.
Yeah. And that's going to be fairly normal. So I know how you feel about Nexus of Fate and about Wilderness Reclamation.
Mm-hmm.
There were none of those decks in our local meta.
No. There
are none in the top 8 of the SCG. And yes, there are a couple in the MTGO results. And bear in mind, the MTGO results came first.
They came out, well, they only came out on the 27th, didn't they?
I thought they were out before that.
26th.
So Okay.
Which makes them come out on
they
the Saturday,
come out
so
on
no
day
one
one
can
of
have...
the SCG, so nothing's
exactly.
going to change. Okay.
Nothing can change.
So taking those all together, are you still massively worried about Wilderness Reclamation and Nexus of Fate?
So I still maintain that we just haven't found the build yet. That's my opinion. I feel like these lists are not doing the most broken thing. And don't get me wrong, I don't know what that is yet. But I keep looking at Wilderness Reclamation and going, this is a dumb Magic card that I can have 2 out and the triggers stack is nuts to me. It is completely insane that drawing the next one isn't a dead draw.
I'm not denying it's a dumb Magic card.
But
I can also say...
at the same time, it's not quite as scary because there has been a relatively low number in the overall meta games in both of these. You know, the top 32 of the MTGO thing, there were only the 2 that top 8'd. Okay, cool. The SCG meta, out of 68, we see 5 Bant Nexus and then 2 Nexus of Gate. So that's 7. So that's, I suppose that is like 10% of the field almost. You're 1 in 10 to hit up against a Nexus deck.
But you're not 1 in 10 to lose to a Nexus deck because...
No.
So, because the things like Mono Red and Mono Blue and Mono White are there, don't they keep these Nexus decks in check?
I don't know actually how good Mono Red is against them.
I am going to believe, and I don't know, I haven't played the matchup, that red is...
I think it's going to be very red draw dependent. If you get your creatures early and you can get some damage down while they're still setting up, and then you can flurry of burn spells.
Because red relies on the burn spells and not on the creatures.
Yeah, exactly.
Red can beat this deck because if you get them down to 6, they don't have the counter spells to stop you winning.
No, exactly. I can totally see where you're coming from there.
I expect
my
it's in
problem
favour of
is
the
that
red
I
deck.
have played... Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. My problem is that I have played against these decks and not taken a turn 5. I haven't died on turn 4, of course.
No, you've died on turn 12.
Still takes... Yeah, exactly. It still takes another 10 turns for them to kill me, but I haven't got to untap and play my 5th land.
I've also played red...
Multiple times.
I've also played red decks where I've won on turn 4.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the draws aren't there. Like, you can have some seriously nutty draws with the red decks. Amusingly, it does decrease light up the stage's stock because you kind of just want to draw them naturally because you're not going to have enough mana. Like, you want to draw 3 lands and enough burn spells
I
and
suspect
creatures to just
against
mush.
it you take out light up the stage post sideboard.
Yeah. Yeah, and experimental frenzy.
Those things,
like
and you put in more things that are going to kill you as fast as possible.
Yeah. Another Legion's War Boss or something maybe just to get a little bit of extra damage in, or I don't know.
They are powerful cards, 100%. No question, but so is Teferi, and I felt Teferi was going to dominate, and it didn't. So is Hydroid Crisis. And if any card could have been said to dominate this weekend, that was the card.
It was Hydroid Crisis.
That's a big dumb green creature.
Yes.
Could we maybe just say Standard is actually a pretty powerful format at the moment?
It really feels it.
With lots of powerful cards.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
And maybe the control decks need something like Wilderness Reclamation to have a hope
against the power of the aggro
of appearing
decks.
in these top 8s.
Well, yeah, see, that was actually something that I kind of wanted to mention. These top 8s, what are we seeing? We're seeing, in our local meta, we've got 1 Jeskai control. We've got... And then obviously the Bant mid-ranges are a little bit more control-y, but they're not super control-y. At the SCG Open, we've got two Esper controls. Yep. And that's it. And then on MTGO, no control.
Unless you count
whatsoever.
Unless you count the Nexus.
Unless you count Nexus
as a control deck. And I think you do. I think the type of people that like playing Nexus decks like playing control decks.
Yeah.
So it has a similar style and feel, even if it's not exactly a control deck.
Yeah. So I will circle back round to my problem with the Nexus decks though, and that is really that I didn't untap to take turn 5, but it still took them 10 turns to kill me, and that just feels really annoying. And again, I know you're going to keep telling me that you should be conceding early, but I don't. It's not deterministic for them to win.
No, I know, but it's also, even if they don't, unless... If it's at the point where if you get one more turn, you win, then fine, let them play it out. If it's, I actually don't win on my next turn anyway, then you should be conceding. Because you're not going to get 2 or 3 turns from that point. You may get...
By the time they've started
there may
comboing off,
be
you mean?
a turn where they don't quite hit their Nexus, and they have to give you another turn.
But then they're going to have access to so much card draw and so much card filtering with like search for Azcannons and things that they will find it the next turn and be able to cast it because of Wilderness Reclamation. Like they could do all of this searching for the next Nexus and still just be able to cast it because they untapped all their lands.
Yeah, and this is true. And so it's, okay, so I want to make sure I can counter those sorts of things. Playing Sultai, where you have blue cards in your sideboard.
And Duress in your sideboard.
Yeah.
Like, I have definitely been happy with the version that's like 3 or 4 Duress, 2 Disdainful Stroke, and a couple of Negates, and just been like, well, I've got a lot of good outs here. Unfortunately, I keep mulliganing to 4 in those.
Well, okay,
games,
so
but that's neither here nor there. Like that's just me being like, it's unfortunate because I can't actually test whether my sideboard plan really works against you because I mulliganed to 4 and had to keep 2 lands and
frankly, you mulligan
something.
to 4. It generally doesn't matter what you've kept, because you're likely to be losing.
Yeah, exactly.
95% of the time you're going to lose that regardless what your 4 cards are.
Yeah, but again, my point there is not, oh, woe is me, I keep mulliganing. That's magic. Like, get on with it. That is definitely going to happen.
Oh, woe is me, I'm mulliganing in this position where I want to be testing whether my sideboard plan works against your deck.
Exactly. That is exactly the point I'm trying to make here. I want to know if 7 or 8 interaction spells with this deck is actually enough. And I mean, obviously, depends if you hit them and that kind of thing.
I think these results are showing us yes.
Yeah, that's what it seems to me. It isn't entirely dominant. It isn't, I've played the Bant deck and therefore I will win. It probably doesn't mulligan very well because it needs to have a bunch of resources to help
I
find
think
both
mulligans appallingly. No point in having a Wilderness Reclamation in your hand if you only have 3 lands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need a critical amount of equipment to you need a certain amount of material on the board and cards in hand to be doing anything.
And you have to have hit your land drops.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's very much like a control deck in that regard. And if you're playing Growth Spiral, you just want to play 27 lands, I think.
In that deck.
Like, in that deck, certainly. I think if you're playing Growth Spiral, you just want to play 27 lands.
I don't know. I've been happy with playing Growth Spiral out on turn 2 and putting my 3rd land from my hand out, even if I don't have another land at that point.
Yeah,
because I've then got another look to get my 4th land, and then if I hit that 4th land on turn 3, I'm so far ahead.
Yeah. But I think it's definitely better in higher land count decks.
I mean, obviously, you're not going to play Growth Spiral in 20 lands. That would be silly.
That would be insane. Yeah. But yeah, these are some really interesting results. So I think the pillars of the format going forward at the moment, it looks like, is a Sultai mid-range list. Very similar to the Golgari list from last season, but with counterspells and Hydroic, which I'm happy to play that. That seems pretty good. There's an Esper list. I can't work out if it's going to be Wyatt Darby's mid-range or if it's going to be a control list. I really like the mid-range list, but...
I like the look of the mid-range list too, but it probably depends on what it's fighting.
Again, we've seen like minimal amounts of control going on this weekend, so I'm a bit like, I don't know which way control's going to have to dive to keep itself relevant in the format. It might have to go into black because then it gets access to things like Mortify, which can deal with Wilderness Reclamations if they've managed to sneak through your counter.
Mortify's stock, I think, should have risen in the weekend. Experimental Frenzy, Wilderness Reclamation, Herdana's Climb. All things that Mortify is great against.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where control stands at the moment. There's definitely a Nexus deck. It's probably the Bant version going into red just for expansion explosion off of your
Though I do love the Gate stuff. Except when
I
it's
love
being
the
played
Gate
against
stuff.
me when I hate it.
The Gates mid-range deck I think is way better. Like, I am way more interested in the Gates mid-range version with the Gatebreaker Ram. I think you called that one right, Simeon. I think that's a way more interesting version of the deck that gets to grind out and do some really gross things sometimes, actually. So, yeah, I think that's going to be, if not a pillar of the format, at least something you're going to have to keep in mind going to any tournaments.
Horrific.
Oh, Gates Ablaze. Yeah, that card is... fantastic, actually.
I was playing decks going, oh, well, I can play this out because there isn't a Wrath in red, is there? Oh, Gates Ablaze for 10. Yeah, I guess all my stuff's dead then. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll go to scoop phase. What's interesting is actually the Bant mid-range lists that we saw. So we saw a Bant mid-range runner-up at SCG, and we saw 2 doing well at Harlequins Preston. It's a little bit early for me to be like, yeah, all right. There's not been a lot of buzz about it, you know. That's my worry at the moment. I'm going to be like, Bant mid-range. It's done pretty well this weekend. But it has done pretty well this weekend, so that's definitely something you're going to need to keep an eye out for. And then there's obviously a mono-red aggro deck. The things that we didn't see, apart from Control, no Judith decks, really.
No Rakdos.
Like, even the Rakdos aggro list that turned up at the SCG were Rakdos burn lists. They were not playing Judith, go wide, smush you with creatures. And there were no Mardu lists.
I can't see that being the case all the way through.
I don't know. I think I can. Having played the Mardu Aristocrats list a ton, I still love the deck. I still think it's... If you have it on Arena, play it. It's so much fun. It is actually really fun and complex and interesting. But it's a 3-color aggro deck, and your mana doesn't work very well a lot of the time. Like, that's actually the issue. I think we might need to find just... maybe mess around with the creature base to get the mana base to work. The mana base is already stretched as far as it can be stretched. I think we need to mess around with what our creatures are.
I think you haven't found the exact mix of creatures you need to make it work well.
Yeah, I can totally see that. But I don't see it becoming a big pillar of the format anytime soon. I think White Weenie is going to get back into the format.
That's the Azorius aggro deck, isn't it? It's essentially White Weenie.
Exactly. It's not being played as a Boros list anymore. We're playing it as an Azorius list. So yeah, those are decks to really consider. And then there's one that I really wanted to mention, Simeon, and this is Status Red.
The Jim Davis deck.
The Jim Davis deck, because there's not a great deal of instant speed interaction going on at the moment, and this is, for those of you who don't know how this works, Status Statue. Status Statue. I'm not going to give in here.
It is Status Statue, yes, because we're not American.
Exactly. Status Statue. Is on its front side on status, it is a hybrid black or green, give a creature +1/+1 and death touch, and on the back side for 2 black and a black and a green, it is destroy target creature, artifact or enchantment at instant speed. Both of these are instant speed. So even its floor is not awful in a format with Wilderness Reclamation, Frenzy, bunches of random removal in, Ixalan's Binding, etc., etc. But what you really want it for is turn 4, Goblin Chainwhirler, hold priority with the Chainwhirler trigger on the stack, give it Death Touch, Plague Wind your opponent's board. That is really good against green decks.
It is. It's pretty good against mono white decks too.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of decks. I mean, last season Chainwhirler's stock dropped drastically because there were just no creatures that it killed anymore. Llanowar Elves, yeah, sure, you kill those, but they've already done their job. They've got you to the explore creatures to find more lands, and now you're just playing 4s and 5s as the Golgari list. Occasionally you catch a Branch Walker or a J-Light Ranger if they got left out in the cold and just drew 2 lands, but that means your opponent can cast all their other bigger spells now, so that's a bit of a worry. But what we are lacking in those green decks is instant speed interaction to try and kill a creature. And that means that your combo is protected. If you're going up against a Golgari-based deck and they tap out to play big dumb green creature and you get to go, put this 3/3 first striker on the board, also wrath your side of the board. That's gross. That's exceedingly gross. Obviously, with Sultai, you can use your Hydro Crises to draw you extra cards and things, but still, getting 4 for 2'd or 5 for 2'd off of important creatures, it still kills Carnage Tyrant, which is nothing to be sniffed at. Although, again, that's a card whose stock has rather drastically dropped this season, I think.
Yeah, especially because Hydro Crisis can replace it in some decks.
Yeah. It replaces it or it goes alongside it, because by the time you're getting to, the amount of manas that you're normally getting to in these mid-range mirrors, it is a 6/6, it is blocking the Carnage Tyrant, and it's already drawn you 3 cards and gained you 3 life. it's found the next one.
Yeah, the trouble is playing it alongside
8/8.
the Carnage Tyrant gives you a few too many 6-drops, essentially.
That is sort of what I've been finding, actually. I might be trimming on Carnage Tyrants in my next Sultai build. Because those games, as you pointed out to me, because Autumn pointed it out on their stream, the mid-range games are still about ultimating a Vivian Reed.
Yes.
You know, that has not fundamentally changed. Ultimating a Vivian Reed is the way that you win the game most of the time. Or at least basically saying, I'm going to ultimate this Vivian Reed. Do you want to just concede here?
And they tend to.
That's more often what happens. Yeah, I haven't found the Vrasta's Contempt, and you put up a really good wall. And with Hydroikrasis to help protect in the air now, there's no even way of like sneaking through damage to chip Vivian Reed down so that she can't ultimate.
Talking of which, the other card in the Jund deck that Jim Davis was running that we should mention is the Angrath.
Yeah, that's a really tasty thing.
It's really tasty to steal a Hydroikrasis because Hydroikrasis is 2 mana, CMC, and then
once it's on the battlefield,
and then sack it.
Yep.
Angrath should be being seen a lot more. There was one, I think, over the whole of the top 8 at Preston in a sideboard, but I feel it's a card I'm going to see come up much more often. I'm going to be needing to type out the flame-chained.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And then there's just, a bunch of good creatures in that deck. It's basically just a mono red deck, but it's big red, and now it's even bigger because it's got this main deck 2-card Wrath thing going on. And obviously the decks where that isn't going to work are the ones that are holding up mana for instant speed stuff and not playing creatures anyway, so it doesn't matter that it's not going to work because there's no creatures to kill.
Yeah, quite.
That's that's kind of where I come down on it. I think that deck should be getting a little bit more play if Sultai mid-range becomes a relatively large part of the format, or green mid-range decks, your Bants, your Teamers.
Sultai mid-range, definitely top of the shop at the moment.
Top of the shop at the moment, absolutely. I'll agree with that. But I think there's still a lot of innovation to be done in this format. And I think next weekend we're going to be seeing even more new ideas coming out, because now we've got a metagame to attack. And the metagame is green mid-range decks.
So next weekend.
Yes, next weekend. What can we be doing? Next weekend we've got 2 winner boxes, in fact. We've got one on Saturday, the 2nd of February at Axion Now. So do head over to their website to check out the information. And then the next one on the Sunday the 3rd, is the Fanboy 3 standard winner box. I believe you want to check out their Facebook events for the winner box series. If you're looking into those, that's what the grouping will be under for the standard winner box. Obviously, they're also running, I think, a draft winner box in like 2 weeks, but we're interested in the standard stuff. And then Simeon, what are we doing the weekend after?
Weekend of the 9th, 10th February is Mega Magic Weekend at Stanford Airport, run by Axion Now. On the Saturday, Team Trio, and the final last chance qualifier in Standard, which I know, Jack, you're definitely going to.
I booked up the other day. I'm going.
I am still not certain. Probably going to. And then on the Sunday, the last ever RPTQ, qualifying for Mythic Championship London. And the first of the 2019 Mega Moderns, with crates of Ultimate Masters and Ravnica Allegiance to be won.
Ooh, that's probably what I'm going to be doing on my Sunday when I scrub out of the LCQ.
I'm probably going to be not being there at all if I scrub out the LCQ. But
I don't blame you on that one. There's a possibility that I'll just come back to Cambridge and stream.
It's also looking like they might be getting towards 94 players.
Yeah.
For the whole top 8 to get there. So
that would be really cool.
Let's keep hoping that happens.
Again, do book in advance, folks. These look like they're going to sell out within the next week, or maybe a week and a little bit. So, get your orders in early to avoid disappointment, as it were. Simeon, what would you be playing this weekend?
Well, I'd love to be playing Sultai, except there's a tiny wee problem with playing Sultai now.
You don't own any of the cards, and the Hydroikrasis are quite expensive.
It's the Hydroikrasis at $40.
Sorry, what? They were like 27 when I checked the other day.
Yes.
I suppose we've now had an SCG.
Let me just check exactly what they are right now. Hydroikrasis, Ravnica Allegiance, out of stock.
$36 I've got on MTG Goldfish.
Out of stock on SCG at 38. Yes. So I don't own any Hydro Crisis, and nor do I own $160 to spend on a playset of Hydro Crisis.
I get you. I do get you.
So I'd have to borrow it, or I'd have to play something based on my tokens deck from last season.
Doesn't seem to be much of that going on.
Would be a Simic counters deck without Crisis in it. I'm not sure. I haven't really tried anything. The other option, I guess, would be to play a burn list of some kind. That wouldn't be too difficult to put together. Either the mono red frenzy deck, or putting in some black for some fun Rakdos burn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think from that meta has a reasonable chance. If you can work out a way of sideboarding it against sort of everybody who comes that goes, okay, now I know what you're doing, I'm going to have life gain and various other things coming on.
I mean, I did love that. So my deck choice I would be playing Sultai mid, because I loved Golgari mid last season, and you're telling me I can play a mid-range deck with counter spells and a massive dumb threat that also draws me cards? I am so in for that. But if I couldn't get that together, which, again, quite likely this weekend, I would be very tempted to look at this status red deck. Like, I get to deal with your silly green creatures, and the sideboard looked brilliant. Like, legitimately go and check out the sideboard for this Jund list, because it's really good. You've got 4 Fountain of Renewal in the main board, in the sideboard rather. So you find one of those, and all you have to do is just make sure you keep killing the opponent's creatures. You will beat them eventually. Because you will find, extra Fountain of Renewals to keep gaining life, to keep them off the burn, to kill you. It looked excellent when Jim Davis got to play it on his article video a couple of days ago. And then you also get Cindervines, which completely destroys what Wilderness Reclamation wants to be doing. Like, if they can't get rid of it, they can't win the game, because it's dealing too much damage to them, then they're not going to be able to win the game. But if it looks like they're going to get to go off anyway, and you're sort of like, they're too higher life total, we're not an aggro deck, we haven't actually dealt them much damage, you can go, pay 1, and I will Destructive Revelry your Wilderness Reclamation. And that seems real good too. So, yeah, I would be very tempted by this status red deck. Jeez, every time.
Could just call it Jund mid-range if you like, and then you don't have to worry.
It's not a Jund mid-range deck. It's like big red splashing black and green.
That's Jund, red, black and green.
Yeah,
no, I know.
Yeah. I know. Like the Jund list that we got from Preston, that's a Jund list. That is, I am playing many spells with multiple different colours of pips, and my mana base is a complex and tricky thing to navigate. The status red list is just like, well, every land except 1 taps for red, and I've fitted as many dual lands in as I feel I can. That's the level you're at. And then most of the black is actually in the sideboard, I think.
Yeah, with Eldest Reborn.
Yes, exactly. Which,
in fact,
another very good
and Duress are the 2 things in the sideboard that are black.
And again, Duress, very good to have in against Control, Nexus of Fate, yada yada yada. That being said, a control deck could do really well this weekend. Everyone's too busy fighting these stupid mid-range fights, and you're just like, well, here's my Teferi, go. And I have honestly had real trouble fighting through control lists, even when I've got my opponent on relatively low life total, and I've Hydroid Crisis 3 times. Because it doesn't matter how many cards you draw, if none of them are relevant to the game.
Yeah,
if your opponent can obviously keep up with you on cards because they're playing a control deck with all of this card draw. So sometimes it can be an absolute slog just to try and finish off the last 3 points of damage. So yeah, I think a control list could do well this weekend. I just don't know what it would be is sort of my problem. Right then, as always, if you'd like to look at any of the lists, obviously we've got the Harlequins Preston top 8 lists up on our website as of time of this episode being up. Do head over to standardintelligence.uk if you would like to talk to either myself or Simeon. We are easiest to reach on Twitter. Simeon, you are?
I am at SimeonBMTG, and Jack, you are?
I am at JackPattern42, and if you would like to send us anything longer form, do email standardpattern@gmail.com. This episode, as always, along with I think all of my stream stuff, except I had a little bit of trouble with the stuff last weekend, so all new stream stuff will be going up on our YouTube, so do YouTube search Standard Intelligence. We should be the top result there. Speaking of my stream, I stream every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Come on over to jackpattern_MTG, and we play Standard on Arena, best of 3, all the time best of 3. Soon it will be ranked best of 3, which I am very much looking forward to. We also have a Facebook page. Again, Facebook search Standard Intelligence, and you should be able to find us. And again, this episode is brought to you in part thanks to our patrons over on our Patreon. If you'd like to be involved in supporting us, and if you'd like to be eligible for the draw on the 5th of February, which is actually next week, please do head over to patreon.com/SIcast and have a look at how you can get signed up there. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.